Okay, looks like most people are here.
Yeah, most of them. It's Delot and Delon, I guess, their names. Okay, they have a different class after this, after the puja.
Mhm.
They're going to Google Meetup. Okay, children. So we're gonna start off with the puja. I mean, by giving you five precepts. Recite Namo Tassa three times to observe five precepts.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Pānātipātā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Adinādāna viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinādāna veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Āmisu miccāchārā viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kāmesu miccāchārā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Musāvādā viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvādā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Suramīraya majjapamā datthāna viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Suramere majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi.
Tilaka, I think your camera is blurred, I think. Doing that by yourself, or is it a technical issue?
Is it better now, Hamaduni?
Oh, you're in the darkness, I guess. Well,
Yeah.
lighting is not good. Anyways, okay. So now we're going to start the puja. So what we're gonna do is that we're going to offer all the offerings we place in front of the Buddha statue, especially in your houses. You already, I assume that you place offerings, candles, flowers, and all that. The Buddha, we're going to contemplate on his great qualities. There are 9 great qualities of the Buddha by reciting stanzas together. So let's recite the stanzas together to offer all the offerings. First, homage to the Buddha 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavatu arhatu samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavatu arhatu samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavatu arhatu samma sambuddhasse. Veneration to the Buddha. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddhu binja charana sangpanno sugatu lokavidu anutteru purisa dhamma sarati sattha deva manussanang buddho bhagavati. Veneration to the Dhamma. Swakhato bhagavata dhammo sandittiko akaliko ehi passiko opanaiko pachattang veditambu vinyuhiti. Veneration to the Sangha. Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Ujupati pannu bhagavatu savaka sangho. Nyaya patipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho. Samichi patipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho. Yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa tungala. Esa bhagavatu savaka sangho. Ahuneyo pahuneyo dakhineyo anjali karaniyo Anuttarang punyakhetang lokasati. Offering candles. Ganasa rappadittena deepena tamadang sina tilokadipang sangbundhang pujayami tamonudang. Offering incense. Gandha sangbhara yuttena dhupena sugandhina Pujaye pujaniyantang puja bhajana muttamang. Offering flowers. Vanne gandhe gunopetang etang kusuma santating pujayami munindas siripada saruruhe pujemi buddhang kusumena nena punyena mete nachahotu mukhang Puphang milayati yatha idammi kayu tathayati vinasa bhavam. Offering medicinal drinks and water. Adivase tunu bhante paniyang parikampitang anukang pang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang Adivase tunu bhante gilana pachayang imang Anukang pang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang adivase tunu bhante besanchang parikappitang anukang pang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang. Veneration of all the pagodas of the Buddha's relics and the Bodhi tree. Vandami chetiyang sabbang sabbathani supatintitang Saririkadhatu mahabodhing buddharupang sakalang sada yasya mule nisinnova sabbari vijayang akha pattu sabbanyutang satta vanditang bodhipadapang. Apologizing from the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha for any mistakes we have done by ways of speech, thought, mind, and actions. Kaina vacha chittena pamadina maya katang achayang kamami bhante bhuri panya tathagata Kaina vacha chittena pamadina maya katang achayang kamami dhamma sandittika akalika Kaina vacha chittena pamadina maya katang achayang kamami sangha supetipanna anuntara. Aspiration. So we wish to be with wise people, be that a family member, friend, co-worker, anyone. We want to be in the company with the wise individuals who can really guide us, who can really help us spiritually. Imina punya kammene mami bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yave nibbana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now it's time for the meditation. So please keep your postures, keep your back, head, and neck straight. Don't lie onto your backrest. You're gonna keep your back, head, and neck straight, and then it's good to close your eyes so that you have more space to meditate. We're going to be practicing the metta meditation. Metta meditation allows us to practice self-love We need to love ourselves first. If we don't love ourselves first, without being selfish, we will never understand how much other people love their lives. So the main thing is we are trying to give some love towards us, and then we understand how precious, how much other people love themselves. So we are practicing compassion after that. Okay, so please contemplate on these aspects of loving kindness. First, we're going to practice self love. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to me. May no difficulties come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always meet with success. May I also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. Moving on to the next phase of loving kindness to other people. May my parents, family members, teachers, relatives, friends, all living beings, including enemies who we don't like, be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May no problems come to them. May they always meet with success. May they also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now we're going to share all the good karmas with the deities and transfer merits to the departed people. Idammi nyati nang hutu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hutu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hutu sukita huntu nyatayo. Ittavata cha ammihi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ittavata cha ammihi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ittavata cha ammihi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca Bhummattha Devanaga Mahindika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkhantu Lokasasanang. Akasattha ca Bhummattha Devanaga Mahindika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkhantu Desanang. Akasattha ca Bhummattha Devanaga Mahindika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakkhantu Mang Paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's time for children to worship the monks. So, Ovini, can you lead?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Silavantam gunavantam punyaketang anuttaram. Tulavena mayaladam buddha putta namamaham. Silavantam gunavantam punyaketang anuttaram. Tulavena mayaladam buddha putta namamaham. Silavantam gunavantam punyaketang anuttaram. Tulavena mayaladam buddha putta namamaham.
Okay. Next, we're going to respect our parents. So please approach your parents. If you don't have parents around you, you can be with me here. First, we're going to respect mother in Pali and then Sinhala. Dasamase ure katva pose si buddhi karanang ayudighang vassa satang matu padang namamahang. Dasamasayak duk vidama hedu ammi lekiri kara powa ma dedi kala ammi nivase budun yai budu himi desu ammi oba bayuga vandimi ma adar ammi. Father, Buddhikaru alingidva chumbitva piya puttakang raja majjang supatintang pitupadang namamahang. නැති බැරි කමක් මට නොදැනින න්‍යායෙනි දුක් කරදර මැදින් මා හැදු දයාවෙනි හොඳ දරුවෙකු වෙන්න මට දුන් ඔවාමිනි ඔබ පායුග වඳිමි මා ආදර පියාණෙනි. Now we're going to bless all our kids. Please come back to your seats. Okay, so as the elders and the monk, we're going to bless all of you. Abhivadana silissa nichang vaddha pachayino chattaro dhamma vaddhanti ayuvanno sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminate saminchatu. Okay, up next is singing Dhamma song. Please rise from your seats and then put your hands down. Don't put your palms together. Just sing the Dhamma song. Thank you. Let's take your seats. Today, we're going to be starting another class for junior kids. Now we have two junior kids, Delot and Delon. Can you pronounce your names, please? Delot?
I think they're muted. Not sure if they know how to turn their microphone on or not.
Yeah, you can do that.
Oh, there they go.
Can you pronounce your names? Yeah, Sela, just wait a second. I'm going to talk to you too. What are your names, please?
Delot
Uh-huh.
and Delon.
Okay, okay. So can you see Sela? Sela? Oh, that's Sela. She's gonna teach you from today, but not on Zoom. Sela, can you explain to us how you're gonna do that?
All right, so I sent an email to your parents that has a Google Meet link. Just tell them to just put that in any like browser, and then it should work. It should link you to my meeting.
Okay, I think your
got
mom.
the link, Sela.
Okay, is that Ashika?
Yeah,
Okay, okay. So her mom knows. Their mom knows about this thing, and okay.
I replied to you, Sela. Thank you.
Okay, okay. So Sela going to be a teacher from today. That's a good announcement, right? Right? Because she studied under both of us. So it's a good opportunity for her to, and she will be, yeah. So the same time that we do the advanced class, we'll call this advanced class, so, or senior class. So she's gonna teach lesson, and not for 2 hours though, because I think they are still too small. So maybe 1 hour. 1 hour is our plan. That means from 2 to 2:30, they are joining the same common puja as they did today. And then from 2:30 to 3:30 is their teaching time, studying time with Sena. And then there is a rest of 25 minutes because we're going to recite Chattamanavaka Gatha to formally finish Dhamma school at 3:55. That's going to be 4:45 in Halifax time. So that's it. So okay, so that's a new initiative from today. I hope that Sela and there will be more students, I guess, in the future, and hopefully. And I also contacted Lata Auntie. She also said to me she would help you, Sela, for any help that she can do. She has some books too, if you want to consult. Okay, Sela, thank you. I hope that you will get in touch with them shortly. Mike, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Good to see everybody. I'm really glad that we're going to have a junior class as well. I think we've had a few times now where we've had students who are a little bit younger interested in having their own class. So we used to have that, so maybe it's good that we have it again.
Yeah, it was kind of discontinued after there was no adequate participation that time. So
yeah. Well, there just weren't enough students in that age group, but I see some more now, so this is really good. But for today, this is the senior class. Continuing from here, we're talking about so everybody that's left here, yep, this is the normal group. Excellent. So we are going to continue with exploring. We are now reaching the bottom level of the sort of cosmic pyramid in Buddhist mythology. Last week we did the petas, the hungry ghosts, and so we're slowly descending the ladder, and today we reach the bottom. We reach as low as we can go, and it's quite gruesome and scary and all those things. But soon after this, we'll jump back up to the top and talk about nice things again. So yes, this time we're talking about Niraya. Niraya is one term in Pali that's commonly used to mean something similar to what we call hell in English. There are other terms, there are other words for this in like Sanskrit and Indian languages. Naraka. Naraka is another word that's commonly used in modern Hindi and North Indian languages. The word for hell is like nark or narg. And so it's all based from the same common sort of root here that we're talking about, this concept of an unfortunate place, the most unfortunate place that a being could be reborn, and what that might look like. And it's probably the most detailed, I think, in terms of the descriptions in Buddhist mythology. Presumably because generations of teachers have wanted to scare students into being good. But that's not really the point here. We're just looking at the mythology in the background. I wouldn't take any of this too literally, because this is really more about the mythology and the history. And if hell really exists, what it might look like is probably not too important to worry about. Okay, so everybody grab your textbooks, put the link in the chat. As usual, here we go. And we're opening our books to section 336, or page 315. Page 315. So while you're all opening your books to that page, this concept doesn't appear to be uniquely Buddhist. It seems to, just like most of these different realms we're talking about, they seem to have been in classical Indian mythology before Buddhism, or at least some approximation of them. So the idea of a Deva realm, the idea of a hell realm, all these various things, they seem to have been rolled into Buddhist mythology and worldview, with different takes and perspectives. Like Buddhism views them all somewhat differently than, say, like Jainism or Hinduism. But there are parallel concepts in these other Indian religions. So, okay. Niraya, the realms of torments. Let's start with Seth. This is, you're always the first one on, so you have to start reading.
Okay.
All right. So why don't you read us the first paragraph on page 315. That's a pretty long paragraph, but yeah, go for it.
The worst possible plane of rebirth in the Buddhist cosmology is Niraya. The word is often translated as hell, although some translators have chosen to call it purgatory, probably to emphasize that no state of existence in Buddhism is permanent. The etymology given by the Pali English Dictionary says that the word means to go asunder, to go to destruction, to die. The explanation for the name given by the commentary says that it is called Niraya because it is without enjoyment. I don't know how to say that word.
Don't worry too much about the specific Pali terms. It's okay. You can just read over them.
Without pleasure. Frequent or without pleasure. Frequently in the suttas, a stock phase occurs which lists three epithets of Niraya: Apaya, Dugati, and Vinapata. Apaya means a state of loss. The commentary says that it means that happiness is not to be found there. Dugati means an unfortunate or miserable rebirth, and Vinipata means falling to a bad place. The first two epithets are also used to refer to the lower realms in general, and may therefore also be applied to rebirth as a peta or an animal, and sometimes to the asuras as well.
Great, yeah. We're going to talk more about asuras later. We've already mentioned them several times, so they've been thoroughly foreshadowed. Even though the asuras are arguably, they're kind of hard to categorize. They're arguably higher than human beings, but also kind of lower at the same time. So they're kind of really strange. So these stock phrases are used to describe these realms. Dugati, unfortunate or miserable rebirth, is like a bad place to go. Like literally, that's the etymology of it. So it's kind of, in this high level, it's just very kind of foggy descriptions of this realm, and that's probably where it starts. In terms of the mythology, the kernel of it is just like the worst place you can go, and then the elaborate descriptions of it that we get later on, and we'll get into more of that tomorrow. Sorry, not tomorrow. Next lesson. They kind of seem to evolve over time throughout the history of Buddhist thought. So there are, I think 18 different hells, and there's very, very specific descriptions of them in, like, say, Tibetan mythology and things like that. I don't think all that's here in the kind of like early mythology of Buddhism and stuff like that. So it's definitely an evolving concept. Ovindu, why don't you read the next paragraph?
Sure. Beings that, while existing in some other realm, create very negative karma, are born in Niraya. It is a place of great suffering, and the tortures experienced here are described in gruesome detail. Despite the superficial similarity, we must be careful not to confuse the Buddhist conception of Niraya with the idea of hell. They differ in at least two important aspects. First, Niraya is not a place of judgment, because in Buddhism there is no one to do the judging. The suffering there is direct result of karma done by the sufferer himself and arises by a kind of natural law. This is true despite somewhat bureaucratic role of Yama, Lord of Niraya, to be considered below. Second, the torment of Niraya is not eternal. It is considered a type of rebirth with its own limited lifespan. Although it may be very long, it is nevertheless finite. When a sufferer's karma is exhausted, he decreases from Niraya and is born elsewhere.
Yeah. So beings in hell in Niraya, they can die and do die all the time, and that propels them into the higher realms usually, because there's nowhere lower they can go. So they this is the bottom out. It's also the most populous, the most full part of samsara, as we discussed earlier. At least that's what the suttas seem to say, that there are many, many times more beings as you go down the ladder. Does everybody know Yama is mentioned here? Yama, the bureaucratic overseer. Is that familiar to all of you?
Yeah. In Sri Lanka, we call him Yamaraju, which means King Yama. He's supposed to be like the king of Niraya.
Okay, yeah, very cool. All right, so that's very consistent across all Buddhist schools as well. From South Asia to like Japan, I think he figures in Buddhist mythology quite frequently. He originates as a Hindu god. He's like the earliest Hindu god of death. So he seems to be incorporated into Buddhist mythology from Hinduism. His name literally means twin, and he's got a very mysterious origin. Sort of like where this figure, this deity, comes from is not really clear. So he's very old in terms of like the story and mythology of Yama, and it's quite mysterious. But he seems to have made his way into Buddhist mythology because he was the god of death in Hinduism. So he was just borrowed over. And I think he's got a kind of an odd, in terms of his mythological place in the system, it's kind of odd because he kind of seems to double up on duties with Mara a little bit, who's also a god of death. So it does seem kind of strange that he's in there, but yeah, so he's kind of bureaucratic role. The lack of eternal nature of Niraya, very important. This is actually why I think this is an important thing to consider, especially when we're looking at talking to people from other religions and understanding their perspective. As Buddhists, we believe that no birth lasts forever. Like, even if you go to Niraya, it does not endure. It's really important to understand that this is a different perspective from, like, say, Christianity or Islam. I know probably a lot of you have met Christians who are very insistent on their religion and insist that everybody, adopt it, and like, they proselytize very hard. And sometimes it can seem annoying and it can make people frustrated. I think it's really important to understand their perspective as well, with genuine compassion and to genuinely put yourself in their shoes. Christians believe that is forever. If you make a mistake and end up there, you can't undo that, or you can't learn a lesson from it. You can't come back from it. Buddhists believe that nothing lasts forever, so no mistake is a total screw up that is irreversible. So I think Buddhism tends to have a more patient attitude toward these kind of things. Like if people are going to do wrong, that's sort of their problem. We try to set a good example, but we're not trying to go out and like make everybody be good, perfect Buddhists, because even we ourselves are not. And we're like slowly trying to work toward a goal, knowing that we'll make mistakes along the way. But from the perspective of some other religions that think this is eternal, this is probably why they're so insistent, because they genuinely care about other people and they want them not to go to this kind of place, because they think they're like, hey, if you go there, it's forever. So I think that's interesting. It's a different perspective. I don't agree with it. That's why I'm a Buddhist. But I think it's something to bear in mind when you're dealing with people who have different perspectives on this kind of thing. And yes, it's not, we don't go there because we are judged or something like that. There's no one who makes these rules. Even Yama doesn't put us there. We end up in this kind of state because we create it with our own minds. We plant the seeds of this kind of thing in our own minds. And this holds true for the lower and the higher realms. So it's just a product essentially of our own intentions. Bovini, why don't you read the next paragraph on the actions, the kamma, that lead to Niraya?
Sure. Kamma in Buddhism means action, or more technically, a volitional action originating in the mind, which acts as the cause for an effect experienced later and which may affect the post-mortem destination. Skillful action leads to a favorable rebirth in the human, Deva, or Dhamma realms. Generally speaking, two kinds of unskillful action leads to rebirth in the unfavorable or lower realms, of which Niraya is the worst. Generally speaking, two kinds of kamma have the greatest effect on determining the destination of a being seeking rebirth. Habitual kamma, such as the routine of acts of killing done by a butcher, or the single kamma occurring at the time or death when the mind dwells on some skillful or unskillful object.
Okay, great. Yeah. So that's the strong, persistent habits that you make during your life are likely to influence your destination in the hereafter, and also what you do with your last moments, mentally or physically, is likely to propel you as well. And that makes a lot of sense if you think about it. If you know at that moment, like we all know we're going to die, but we know probably that we're not going to die like in a moment. We know it's going to happen eventually. At some point, that changes to a knowledge like this is happening now. And what we decide to do at that moment, which is the most important moment we may ever, probably that we'll ever face in a lifetime, is what we do at the very end. That what we decide to prioritize in that moment is a very deep thing. And so that can also affect our destination. What these actions are and how they affect our state, this is really just an extension. So like, I think there's been a lot of people in the history of Buddhism everywhere who've tried to work, even though the Buddha said don't bother because it will drive you crazy. A lot of people have tried to figure out, what specific actions carry what penalty. They've tried to make it like an accounting chart. Like, if you mistreat your parents, then you'll be reborn as a dog, or, like all these kind of silly, like they try to make a matrix. If you do this one thing, then what's the punishment in the hereafter? But the Buddha discouraged people from doing that because it's really complicated. He said it's like not that simple. It's not like a math problem. And also it's not really that far off what we experience in the here and now. So if you generally, there are obvious basic rules, like, you don't kill, don't steal, and so on, the 5 precepts. And we have just general kind of rules for not causing suffering for other people, but we also build a mental world, a mental landscape, the world we inhabit. We only live in our own minds, right? And as we experience things in this world, the perspective that we bring to them that is likely to reflect, as we build skillful habits, that world that we inhabit becomes more peaceful, happy, joyful, and so on. And the opposite for unskillful actions. If you find doing a specific action creates a mental world, a mental universe that is, dark, angry, brooding, resentful, then that's going down toward the lower realms. If you find it does the opposite, it's going toward the higher realms. So this experience that we have here in our own life, the idea is that that's just extended. You just take that principle and extend it across many lives. So there's not really a different system for determining whether an action is skillful in this life or the next. Just whatever seems to be working here and now, that will also propel you into a good direction in the hereafter. So there are some simple things to avoid and some more subtle challenges that we can face in navigating these realms. Diaka, why don't you read the next paragraph?
Sure, yeah. Various unskillful actions?
Yeah.
Various unskillful actions are specified as leading to a rebirth in Niraya. Breaking the 5 precepts is the most obvious example, but many other transgressions are mentioned. A bhikkhu may go to Niraya if he praises the unworthy, disparages the worthy, is stingy or conceited in regards to lodging or supporters, and if he wastes the gifts of the faithful. The 3 fires of passion, anger, and confusion lead there. Miserliness and ingratitude are also state of mind, which lead one toward Niraya. Reviling or abusing worthy beings such as arhats or pure samans or brahmins is mentioned many times, and he's said to lead a long period of suffering in Niraya. However, an evil deed done by generally good people does not necessarily lead to Niraya. As an analogy, it is stated that a lump of salt placed into a small glass of water makes it salty, but does not affect the taste of water if it's thrown into a large lake.
Fantastic. Good. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of obviously breaking the 5 precepts, breaking one or even all of the 5 precepts individually does not guarantee you'll go to Niraya. Some people might think, oh, if the first precept is the most important, if I kill somebody, I'm definitely going to hell. But that's not true, because we see Angulimala, he killed many people and he did not go to hell. He became arhat. So there are ways to undo bad deeds and the effects of them and to compensate up through genuine repentance. So this is the simile of the lake. If you continually pour bad, gunk into your mind, then it's more likely that you're going to develop an unfortunate state for yourself. But if you generally are doing an okay job of keeping a pure livelihood and a pure mind, and then you make a few mistakes in there, it's not really a big deal. Even if you happen to break the precepts, you have to be a little forgiving with yourself and not too hard. We do see here as well that, and this is important, that you see some behaviors that monks do that can lead to hell. But if a lay person were to do these things, it's less likely. So, for example, you're being picky about your room or whatnot, or you're wasting things that people give you. This is not, if you're a lay person, this is not behavior that's likely to lead to hell. I mean, maybe not great, but it's probably an annoying kind of cluster of personality traits, but it's not necessarily leaning towards Niraya. It's because monks have a responsibility to live up to people's expectations of them. And so this is why I think it's important to remember, if any of us choose to walk the monastic path, that we have a responsibility to live up to the intention that those robes and so on represent. And if you are just putting them on as a lark, or just to loaf around, or just get an easy pass, that's very, very bad behavior. And that will lead to bad states. So the idea here is to keep our commitments, keep them honorably and nobly. Okay, good. And other things, let's see here. Naomi, why don't you read the next paragraph on wrong view?
Is it okay? Especially wrong view is a cause for rebirth in Niraya. Bhikkhus, I see no single thing which compares to wrong view for causing a being to arise after death in Niraya. This is because the holding of a wrong view can lead a person into committing grave moral transgressions based upon that view. An obvious example in the context of ancient India was animal sacrifice, which the Buddha very much opposed. Not all wrong views can lead a person into the kinds of actions which tend toward Niraya. 3 in particular are specified. Okay, I can't say.
That's fine. We have ahetuka ditti. Hetu is a cause. Ahetuka means without cause. Kiriya is an action, right? So akiriya is non-action or no action, and natti nattika ditti. So natti is it is not. Literally, it means it is not. And so that's why they say here. Literally, these are no cause view, no action view, and nothing exists view, which is nihilism. I mean, you can go ahead and keep reading.
Literally translated, these are the no's. Oh.
I just read that. Yeah, you can keep going from there.
So, these 3 are all variants of the denial of karma and vipaka, or the idea that there is no future result from deeds. It is easy to see how this view might tend to an immoral life. Sakayaditi, or the personality view, which postulates a real self while a hindrance to awakening, does not lead to nidya, since the holder of this view would still accept the idea of action having a result and be morally restrained.
Okay, great. So here it's important. Yeah, this is a fairly important section, I think. So wrong view, there are different kinds of wrong views. And strictly speaking, anybody who's not fully enlightened, anybody who's not an arhat has wrong view to a certain extent. But it's specific kinds of wrong view which lead us to niraya. As the author says here, Sakaya Ditti. Sakaya Ditti is a very, I think it's a pretty commonly used term. It means like a being about the body. So Kaya is a body, right? So it's like you are kind of having this view that you are the body. That's the core of it, I think. And if you can, the stream winner who has first glimpsed Nibbana breaks that. They understand that they are not their body intuitively. So the stream winner can't have Sakaya Ditti. Traditionally, that's what the traditional commentaries and I think the suttas also say. But even like a non-stream winner who's a noble person, like generally like a good and upright person, can have Sakaya Ditti and they can go to good realms and so on. It's not really dangerous to think I'm my body and feel that way. You can still think I'm my body and realize that if you treat other people badly and cultivate hatred in your heart, you will suffer. Like those, like that's pretty obvious, right? So the views that lead us to bad states, both here and in the hereafter, are ones that have to do with underestimating the power of habit and action to have an effect on our mental state. That's why these 3 are mentioned. So no cause view means that things happen without a reason or a cause. Like it just happens randomly and spontaneously. That's ahetuka ditti. Akiriya ditti means that my actions don't matter. Like what I do has no effect on my state of happiness or sorrow. It's, say, fatalism or belief in some kind of all-powerful God. If this God gives me happiness, then I get happiness. If not, then I'm sad. Or just randomness. Things just happen randomly. It has nothing to do with me or my efforts. This is akiriya ditti. So we may think that a lot of people think that these days. I think it's a popular view, and it's unfortunate because it causes us to suffer. We think we have no power over our state of mind and our own satisfaction. And nattika ditti is it does not exist. So this is, generally speaking, this can mean a lot of things. This can mean that God doesn't exist. It can mean that the soul doesn't exist. It can mean that the afterlife doesn't exist, or that Nibbana doesn't exist. So there are all kinds of nattikas. Hindus call Buddhists Gnostikas, which means, and Natikas. So Hindus call us, they say we have this view because we don't believe in God or the soul. So it depends what you're talking about when you're saying it doesn't exist. But I think here we're talking about Nibbana. I think that's the thing, like that liberation doesn't exist. If you believe that that is impossible, then you will obviously not make any effort towards it. And so these are particularly dangerous because they can lead us to act sort of without a rudder or a compass, and we'll just kind of drift in whatever direction our existing tendencies lead us. So those are dangerous, and they can lead to Niraya, and they can lead to kind of hellish states even here and now. It's important also. Let's read the last paragraph, and then I'm going to summarize. Neto, why don't you read the last paragraph? It's quite short. I'm not hearing Neto. Okay, I will read the last paragraph, and Neto can chime in if he's there or if the mic is working again. There are 5 actions which have a certain result, determining that the transgressor will be reborn in Niraya without fail. These are killing one's mother or father, it's number 1. 2, the killing of an arhat. 3, the wounding of a Buddha. 4, creating a schism in the Sangha. Oh yeah, so 1 and 2 are killing the mother and the father. That's 5. Conversely, the attainment of Sotapatti, or stream entry, the first stage of awakening, frees a being forever from the danger of taking rebirth in Niraya or the lower realms. Such a person is able to say, Kina Nirayomi. So I have destroyed Niraya. So this is actually a very interesting phrasing also, I think, because it shows us that the important thing is these are all mental states. Like these are, the world as we understand it is inside of our mind. And so the human realm, the deity realm, the hell realms, all of these things, they are inside of our own minds. And so if you have put an end to the experience of something, it is destroyed for all intents and purposes. Like if you never experience it, it doesn't matter, right? So this is why it's phrased like this. It's like, from that person's perspective, there is no hell. It's gone. Never going to taste it again. So, okay, good. The 5 actions here are pretty important to avoid, but obviously they're kind of unusual. So more commonly, I think we have a lot of cases of people who create these kind of hellish mind states by doing other things, as is listed in the second or third paragraph here that we read. It's not just breaking 5 precepts. It's cultivating a general attitude can also cause you to suffer like this. I have known people who they've never killed anybody or anything. They don't kill bugs or whatever. They don't take intoxicants or lie, or they don't, cheat on their partner. They don't steal. But they still seem year after year, day after day, to be more and more miserable. I think you will meet a few people like this. Sometimes like people who are like elderly, and they got their gray hair, they got their grandkids, they're in the golden years. Some people who are in that stage of life are very happy, and they've come to peace with what they can't change and solve, and they've grown in wisdom. But that's not guaranteed. Some people, as they get older, become more bitter and sour and grumpy and angry, and you will meet fair few of these grouchy older people in your lives. Those are 2 different paths you could walk down over the course of your life. And if you cultivate that grouchy attitude, that kind of angry, resentful heart, even if you are strictly speaking following the rules, it could still lead you to a bad place, because following the rules the rules are only there so that they help us cultivate a particular state of mind. And so that perspective, that state of mind is the goal. That's where we're going. So we should be using these rules as a yardstick for our own wisdom and our own peace of mind. And if we're not approaching that, then we need to take additional measures. I think that's an important thing to remember. Otherwise, we can get caught up in scorekeeping and going, oh, I'm following all the rules. I'm doing all these things technically correctly. I'm doing it by the book. I'm safe. And then, let those bad habits, mental habits, catch up with you. Okay, but it's unlikely that any of us are going to commit any of these five irredeemable sins. Does anybody know, incidentally, I think we might have touched on this already, previous lesson, why wounding a Buddha is on the list? I think we definitely talked about it. Wounding a Buddha is on the list, but killing a Buddha is not. Why is it not?
Because it's impossible to kill a Buddha.
Yeah. It's not necessarily physically impossible. They're not like physically invincible. It's just that they have enough merit stored up that it's not really going to happen to them. It's never going to happen because they just have enough favorable circumstances. Like, it'll just work out that they'll be charismatic and persuasive enough that you'll change your mind, or you'll miss, or whatever. So, but it's still possible to wound them. And so that.
I'm pretty sure like the closest thing is like that Devadatta threw a rock at the Buddha Hunter's head, and it was only like one drop of blood or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, that's what the tradition states, that Devadatta did. He tried to kill the Buddha and he failed because the blow wasn't fatal, but he did draw blood, and for that Devadatta ended up in Niraya. Also for the act of causing division in the monastic community, in the Sangha, he was also. That's another one that's on the list, I think, here, which is creating a schism in the Sangha is another one on the list. So that's a double no-no. But he's not actually the one who ended up in Niraya the longest. Interestingly, in the suttas anyway, there are all kinds of beings, and throughout history, I'm sure there are others who have done worse. But I don't know if we'll actually get to this today. We might have to pass over this. But yeah, on page 320, what is it? 321? Yeah, on page 321, it also mentions the monk Kokalika. And this is a good example of what I was mentioning earlier. So Kokalika repeatedly reviled Sariputta and Moggallana and refused to apologize or admit his fault. When he died, the Buddha declared that he had gone to Padma Niraya, when he would stay there for a very long time. So it seems like he was the longest one, like the one who in the suttas was destined to spend the longest time in Niraya. And he didn't do any of the unforgivable sins. He didn't do any of those things. He, in that sense, you'd think, oh, well, Devadatta is much worse. But it seems that cultivating this kind of general grouchy attitude actually landed him in more hot water than Devadatta. So it's important to remember, this is a good illustration, because he was a monk. He, as far as we can tell, he kept the rules mostly, like he didn't commit any of the parajika offenses or anything, but he still ends up in Niraya for a very long time because of this attitude that he had. So this is a good reminder that it's not just strictly following the rules, but also cultivating wholesome mind states. That's the ultimate objective. Okay. Yeah.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
It was about when Devadatta struck the Buddha with the rock.
Mm-hmm.
The Buddha obviously, like, he experienced pain, right? So what did he do, like, to actually, like, and what did he do wrong in his previous life to get that in return? Did he do anything specifically wrong?
Oh, so what did the Bodhisattva do to earn the pain of being struck by a rock?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure it's going to be in the literature somewhere. Whether that would be apocryphal or like genuine, like some genuine thing that the Buddha described, I don't know, but it would be worth maybe looking into. I've never thought about that question. Yeah, there's certainly are cases of where we see arhats who have in the suttas who have, they've achieved nibbana and they're just living out the rest of their final birth, but they have some negative experience happen to them, and it's because of something they have done in a previous life, or because of something that they've done in a current life, in their present life, and they have to put up with it. And so obviously that could apply as well to the Buddha, because he's not really qualitatively, in terms of like what he is, he's not really any different from the arhats. It's just quantitatively, he just stored up more merit and so on. So yeah, there's presumably some reason, but I don't know what it is. Maybe I'll look into it. I'll see if I can find out the answer for you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll try and find that for next time, or maybe during our little break coming up, which I think we can start now and come back at 3:15. And I do have a little Kahoot for us to do this time, and then we can just have a little discussion. So go ahead, take a break, have a snack, go to the washroom, whatever you need to do, and meet back at 3:15.
Mike, we're here.
Okay, fantastic. Start to filter back in.
Mike, I had a little question. Could I ask it?
Yep.
Okay, so I was reading the book in this, and I found like we were reading it, and the 5 actions, and the first 2 were killing one's mother or father. Does this mean like killing a human's mother or father, or does that mean like an animal or anything?
That is a good question. I think generally it would hold true. It should hold true generally, but I don't know if there's a firm answer to this question, because I think it's generally assumed that like all of the rules and prohibitions and so on are for human beings, because we have a kind of understanding of the relative importance of all these issues. So for example, if you have like some spiders eat their parents when they're born, but I think the parents are already dead sometimes. So it's like, is that a bad thing? Do the spiders go to Niraya after that? Maybe. But I think an important part of this to remember is that like lucidity, like your knowledge of what you're doing, is an important component. So when it says killing your mother and father, I think the wording is important. It really should be murdering your mother or father, because there are other ways to kill people, like by accident, in which case we call it manslaughter in legalese. That's a different thing from murder. And manslaughter is a crime, but is a lesser crime because you do it unintentionally. So probably still maybe bad, but in Buddhism, intentionality is key. So if an animal doesn't understand what they're doing exactly, it's not likely that they'll suffer the same consequences, not to the same scale, right? And this comes back to, again, what we talked about with the monks, say, misbehaving. If they're doing things which are generally kind of bad behavior, but not like evil things, it's worse than if a layperson does this generally kind of bad behavior, because the monk presumably knows what he's doing, has made vows to stop doing things like that, and is still going against it. So I think there's probably not a good firm answer, but it's probably worse if a human being with full knowledge of what it means to have care and love for your parents deliberately kills them. That's probably much worse than if an animal who probably doesn't know better does it anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Very heavy topics. I think everybody's back now. Why don't we do, let's see, it's 3:18. Let's do a short meditation. Yeah, I've been trying to emphasize to people. I've been talking a lot with my friends and family, being like encouraging people to meditate recently, because we're all locked down now. So you might as well. So yeah, why don't we do a few minutes? We'll try not to, maybe like 5 or 10 or something. Try not to keep it too long. You all know what to do. You probably have your own methods of meditation that you like. You can do whatever you want for the next 10 minutes-ish. Okay, you can make a little wish, dedicate any merit that you want to. If you want to make an aspiration for yourselves, your family, this is a good time because meditation brings great merit. And you can stretch and rub your legs and arms or whatever you need to do. And we can do, if you guys want to, we can do a Kahoot. I have one ready. Anybody want to do that? Okay, I see some nods. All right, we'll do it. Let's see. So let's start by doing this. We'll do it in this mode. It's gonna start with that really loud music in a second, I'm sure. Okay, and let's screen share. Kahoot. There you go. That looks right. Shouldn't be too hard. I think we covered almost all these questions today in the class, so you shouldn't have to do a lot of digging. Okay. All right. I think I just see Naomi missing. You good there, Naomi, or?
Yeah, I'm joining right now.
All right. Yeah, I didn't, there's just a few questions in this one. I didn't put a lot of trivia about like how long do Niraya beings live and all that stuff, because there's not a lot of specifics we've covered at this point. So just some general trivia questions. And this one's for any of you who were around to watch this show, which is probably none of you. I don't know. Yep, Yama is in charge, King Yama. The picture's from Dragon Ball Z, by the way. I don't know if any of you have watched Dragon Ball Z, but it might have been a little bit before your time. Which wrong view does not necessarily need to Niraya? We got a very skeptical looking guy. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Personality view. It doesn't necessarily lead to Niraya, because you can think I'm a person, I really have a self or whatever, and that will not necessarily lead you to cultivate bad mind states, but it's just confusion. The opposite, which action always leads to Niraya. Good. Okay. Yeah. Killing one's parents will always lead to niraya. Not paying your taxes, not a nice thing to do, but you know that's a lesser offense. Naomi's on fire. Okay. Here we go. 4. In the suttas, who is the one who was to spend the longest time in niraya? Oops. We have a typo actually, unfortunately. Well, that's probably my bad because I clearly typed this twice. But yeah, it was Kokalika. Devadatta was the next most popular answer. Yeah, and this was a trick because the picture was actually one of Devadatta, but he doesn't go there for as long because general nastiness can sometimes outweigh breaking the strict rules. True or false? A very unwholesome final thought can lead to niraya. Yes, it can. Because it tells us a lot about our priorities if we choose to do something unskillful in our final moments. It's part of the reason why I say like being a soldier is extremely dangerous, because while killing itself can be atoned for, as we see in like Angulimala's case, a soldier is likely to die while they are in the middle of thinking thoughts of hatred and destruction. So it's extremely difficult for a soldier to escape this fate. Okay, good job. All right. Nope, share screen. Nope, I want to stop sharing. I think I just did that. All right. Good. Okay. So what do we want to talk about today? What do we want to chat about? Any lingering questions, thoughts? They can be about Niraya, what we talked about, or other things. Doesn't really matter. I had a quick look over our 10-minute break for answers, quick and easy answers to Dilaka's question. I couldn't find any. It might be out there, but it's hidden, so I'd have to dig further. I did find some interesting commentary about how different early traditions depicted Devadatta and his role in the community and the early Buddhist movement. It seems like not all the early Buddhist traditions agreed about how bad Devadatta was, which I think is kind of telling. And it seems also that the issues that he raised, it seems like he proposed a few rules to the Buddha. He said, these are some rules that I think the monks should follow. They're strict and it would be better. And the Buddha said, that's too strict. We don't need to be that strict. But some of those rules appeared in the Theravada account of the first schism, which historically is probably not entirely what that schism was about. So it's possible that some sectarianism kind of crept into the story of Devadatta. It's not entirely clear, but it's possible that not all the things that are said of him were actually true. But we don't know for certain.
Mike?
Yeah.
I had a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
This is a long time. I kind of forget, what is Devadatta in relation to the Buddha? Are they like cousins or like?
Yeah, they are. I actually did look this one up. I managed to answer your question, this one, but not the one before it. So he is the Buddha's, he is a cousin of the Buddha. He is the brother of Yasodhara, the Buddha's wife. So they were, also that means Yasodhara is the Buddha's cousin, which is a little bit weird by our standards, but in those days, if you were aristocracy, marrying into extended family was pretty common. So he was a cousin. I think it was like a second cousin or something like that, and the brother of Yasodhara. So that's the relationship.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, cousin and brother-in-law, I guess, which is a weird overlap. Recently read an article about how in the West, in Europe, the Catholic Church had very strict rules about marrying cousins that don't appear like in Buddhism. They had just very strict rules about like who counted as family, and we don't have anything like that because Buddhism is not so much about interfering in the personal lives of individual lay people, and like culture is given a pretty wide berth. So it's like deciding what is allowed and not allowed by culture is very fluid, I guess. But apparently in the Catholic Church, they had like big old tables and charts about like who was a cousin, who could you not marry and stuff. And it apparently profoundly impacted the way that Europeans thought just about their culture and the world they lived in and so on. It affected the way family structures were built. And it was a really interesting topic that I'd never considered before. But yeah, I don't think we have so much of those problems these days. We don't have, I think it was more common when we had small communities of people. Yeah, what else is going on now that you're all locked up at home? I guess you're not going to school, any of you, like in the school?
Yeah.
No, it's all online now.
Yeah, it's all online.
Okay, so they're keeping these going. They've finally, I guess, because it's a bit overdue. There was a long discussion of how and when they should move things online, and it was very slow. Okay, well, I mean, I'm glad to see that you guys are going to be safer because the numbers are pretty bad right now. How are you all doing with your, I don't know, with meditation practice? Do you have any meditation practice going on now?
We actually got introduced to meditation in gym class for health. That's
good. That's really good. What kind of approach are they using?
Not really like the Buddhist way, like sort of similar, but like we don't have to put our hands together. Just like close your eyes and just like breathing in and out, like the breathing meditation we used to do.
Okay, that's popular these days. Just general kind of mindfulness of breathing, and that's you find it everywhere these days. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, it's it's better to have that just, I think, spread everywhere. If everybody practices meditation, it'll probably benefit the world in general. So I'm glad to see that's in the schools now. There was a case in the United States. One of the states decided to they banned teaching meditation in schools because they thought that it was teaching Buddhism. But I think that that's a kind of a misunderstanding, because they were this is state, like one of the red states that believes that, you know, Christianity should be taught in schools and so on. But I think there is a difference, as you mentioned, between practicing Buddhism and just doing meditation. Buddhism isn't just that one activity. It requires a lot of different factors to be, and that is one of them, obviously. But you have to do all kinds of other things, like live a good life and be noble and virtuous and treat people with respect and cultivate wholesome mind states. And just being able to focus on a specific thing doesn't necessarily make you a good Buddhist, but it certainly helps.
But sometimes some people take meditation as a joke, and they I don't know why, they just put their hands together and they make like a humming sound and they pretend to be meditating and stuff like that sometimes.
Oh yeah. I've seen people do that, take that kind of attitude. There's also a lot of general kind of, I think, ignorance about Buddhism. People just don't know a lot about it. When I say ignorance, I don't mean that in like as a criticism. I mean, we're not very numerous. There aren't very many of us in the West. I think it's maybe like 1% or something of Canada's population. For example, it's almost nothing. There's so few of us that I've met many people who never interacted with Buddhism before, and they have no idea. You know, they can't distinguish between, for example, my personal habits and like Buddhist rules. Like I tend to have a pretty simple, or I did before the pandemic. You know, my house was pretty empty because I didn't want to spend money on decorating it and furniture and all this stuff. So people thought there was a rule that like Buddhists weren't allowed to have chairs. I'm like, that's not true. I'm just cheap. But with that kind of attitude where, you know, people are like, oh, what, I see things on TV or whatever, and like I've seen Kung Fu Panda, I know what Buddhism is all about or something. You know, there's it's not part of the society and culture enough for people to understand it really fully, and that can lead to misunderstandings and stuff. I think people mix up Buddhism and Hinduism a lot. I've heard a lot of people go like, oh, you're a Buddhist, namaste, and I'm like, one, that's not a Buddhist greeting. Two, it's not even really a Hindu greeting. Like yoga practitioners say namaste to each other a lot, but namaste doesn't mean anything religious at all. It's just literally, it's like hello in Hindi. Like it's so so people have no idea because they mix up the two. They don't understand the difference or what and all these things. So they it's and that can be challenging because people make assumptions about you and your behavior. But it can also be a good chance to share your culture and your religion, explain to people, as long as they're not being like super mean. And you don't have to be hostile about it. You could be like, well, actually, no, we don't have a rule about that, or we don't have a specific greeting that we use or anything like that, you know. And you can explain these things to people, and maybe hopefully gradually, you know, Western society will become more comfortable and familiar with Buddhism, and I think that would be good for everybody.
Mike, I have a quick question. It's about King Yama. So where would he be in like the Buddhist pyramid of like caste or whatever? Because he should be higher than the beings in hell because they're enduring like torment. But I'm wondering if he's like higher than humans because he's also a god in one aspect.
Yeah, this is a little bit like dealing with Mara as well, because Mara is supposed to be, like, we think of Mara as bad, but actually Mara is considered a fortunate rebirth. If you could be reborn as Mara, that would be good. It's also considered like, oh, good job, you did that. And I think he might be a kind of yakka, but I'm not certain. As well, as I mentioned, he's sort of glued into the Buddhist cosmos. Like I don't know if he's mentioned in the suttas, or if he is, it's sort of metaphorically, because his origins are as a Hindu deity. So wherever he's fitting, it might be sort of uncomfortably, because as you observed, it's sort of an odd position. Like he dwells in a lower realm, but his position is sort of privileged there. So it could be that he's yeah. Oh, we do get into discussion of Yama a bit more further on in this chapter. I wonder if what does it say here? Yeah, he's there is, oh yeah, there's a realm that's called the Yama realm, which is different from Yama. So Yama is the figure we're talking about, and there's Yama, which is there's a kind of heaven called the Yama heaven. Yeah, I think there's some discussion of him in there. It's kind of odd. He's certainly, I think he has a unique place. I don't think he's I don't think he really fits into a specific position. Like he's not, maybe you could argue that he's a kind of deva, but I think it's like he's his own thing. As far as I'm just like scrolling through the textbook here, seeing if there's any indication of him being categorized as another kind of being. Like, is he a deva? Is he a yaka? What is he? I don't know if he falls into any of those categories. I think he's got his own special sort of gig going on. And you could be reborn as Yama as well. Like it's a station, it's a position. Like Mara, it's a position, or Saka or Indra, right? The king of the gods. That's also another position. Like it's a name, but it's also kind of a title, because you could be the next Indra, right? Or something like that. So yeah, presumably it's sort of, you could treat it as being like a Yama as well as the Yama. But yeah, no, there's no he's not a kind of any sort of thing. He's sometimes, oh yeah, here we go. He's sometimes said to be of Manika Peta, a being with mixed karma who spends part of his time enjoying deva-like pleasure and part of it in Peta-like suffering. He's not an evil being. He's considered a righteous king in the suttas. So he's sort of maybe tragic. So it sounds like he's sort of, he's kind of a hybrid being. He kind of has one foot in two different worlds. I can't imagine what you'd have to do to end up in that weird situation.
Okay, so he still has like pleasure like a deva, but he also has suffering like a peta.
Yeah. In that sense, I guess he's sort of similar to a human, but maybe just more extreme on the pleasures and pains, right? We also have a mixed experience. So yeah, in that respect, maybe, it's more muted, right? Like when we have pleasures, they're okay, and when we have pains, it's like, that sucks. But probably nothing. He just goes like flips back and forth between extremes on the two. So maybe he's fortunate as well, like us as humans, in that he can recognize that, okay, yeah, it feels good today, but tomorrow it's gonna suck, or tonight it will be terrible, and so maybe he can recognize the importance of practicing Dhamma, because he knows that pleasures and pains are impermanent, unlike the devas who really struggle with that lesson.
So would he be able to do merit if he was able to recognize those things?
Is he likely to do meritorious things? I didn't quite hear you. That what you said?
Is he able to do meritorious deeds?
Yeah, I think so. As far as I can tell, any being is capable of doing meritorious deeds. It's just harder. It's just harder the further down you go. But I think there are some Jataka tales where we have the Bodhisattva in pretty awful conditions doing meritorious things. So we see that even in the animal realm or in the Niraya world, it's possible to do to overcome that impulse to lean into our instincts and just pity ourselves or lash out in hatred. So yeah, it's absolutely possible for any being to do good deeds and to crawl back up and to eventually achieve freedom. There's some debate, and this is different across schools, in in Mahayana, in general, so in like Tibet or Chinese Buddhism, it's asserted that all beings will achieve freedom, because if there are infinite beings given infinite time, each one of them will figure it out and go all the way to become totally liberated. But in Theravada, it's not talked about, which is just not discussed whether or not all beings will become free eventually. It's not really known, and I think it's kind of discouraged to speculate about it. But that it can change your attitude, you know, if you have. So it might be a good attitude to consider at some point, you know, just hold that different perspective in mind and go, hey, did this this is a person that could also be on their way to freedom. Maybe they'll achieve it first before me, especially when you're dealing with people who are, you know, make you upset or impatient. You could think to yourself, hey, I should be careful to treat them with kindness, because maybe they will become free first and they can teach me, or I can have a good relationship. So try and maintain those good relationships, because you never know if they're just in a bad phase and then like next lifetime or maybe tomorrow they'll really get it, you know. So you can't ever tell exactly what's going to happen next. I think that's an important thing to bear in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I also have another question. So in Apaya or Niraya, like when the person's receiving like bad things, like they're putting them in lava and stuff, does the person die and then get reborn and reborn and reborn, like die and reborn, or does it just keep on happening and happening until like does the person feel pain every single time, or does the person die and then gets reborn in Apaya and then dies and then again gets reborn in Apaya?
Yeah, so no, the torments are not lethal. They don't kill you. And this is one of the terrifying things about it. These painful experiences will keep happening, but somehow you don't perish. You don't die, and you just keep on experiencing the pain. And eventually you do die. And presumably it's possible to be reborn in Niraya many times. Like it's possible to be reborn in as a human multiple times in a row. So presumably this can happen, but the idea is that the kind of miraculous and terrifying thing about it is no matter what they do to your body, you still persist. And this is important to remember. It's like a bad dream. Your body is not, it's mind made. It's all in your mind. So like all these horrible things that are happening to your body in the Niraya state, the reason why you can persist is because the body is supported by the mind and the mind states, not the other way around. So it's the same reason you could experience terrible fear over and over in a nightmare that doesn't make sense, or something. Like you're like, well, this is silly. Like, wouldn't this guy get tired by now chasing me or whatever? So it's a little bit like that. So yeah, you don't perish because the mind, the negative mind states that you've cultivated perpetuate the body that keeps feeling the suffering. Yeah, you're welcome. That's that's a pretty terrifying question. We're actually going to talk a bit more. We've talked very generally about it this time. Niraya, as I said, is a very extensive topic. It's been covered a lot in Buddhist literature throughout history. We will spend one more session on it, and we'll talk more specifically about what the different kinds of nirayas, because there are different like layers and sorts of nirayas and the torments that beings experience in them. So we'll talk about a couple of those next time when we revisit this topic. And then don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. We will talk more, and I think actually we'll spend the most time on the higher realms. We spent 3 lessons on devas, and I think 4 or more on Brahma realms. So don't worry, this is a brief tour of the nasty parts before we get to the nice bits. Okay, we got. All right. Okay, good. So I think we're just about out of time, unless there's like one quick final question. Wait, where's Bhante? There he is. Okay. Any last questions? Okay, good. Well then, let's hand it over to Bhante Chandima. I'm glad to see our friends from the junior class are back too. And so now we can maybe dedicate some merit and close the lesson for today.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, it's time to. Oh, how was the class? Our junior class, Dion. How was it?
It was good.
It was good. Okay, what did you learn today?
I learned about the eight thing.
Is it a Jataka story?
Yes.
Okay, what was the moral?
I am telling the truth.
Great. Okay, so now we're going to recite the Chattamanika Gatha. So please rise and then recite the text. And we will be seeing again on January 31st, right? Mike?
Yeah, 31st. That's correct.
Yeah, 31st. I hope we have the application by that time. Zoom application, so it can go.
Yeah, we'll set it up so that we
okay.
can directly put it on YouTube.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We'll see everybody again in 2 weeks on January 31st.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Hamduni.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Hamdru.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.